Hi everyone and welcome back to Artificer Studios. As always, I'm Alex. We're now on part 4 of my Thor Infinity War build. In the last video, we ended up with the finished vest for his underlayer, for his torso. In this video, I'm going to talk about how I created the pattern for the applique pieces that I will put onto it to actually build up the armor look. It's a fairly simple process, honestly. It's very similar to the bracers, but it's just a little bit more in-depth because it's got more shaping to it. So, let's see exactly how I managed to do that, and maybe you guys will be able to use it to create something for yourself. So, here we have the completed vest. The zipper is in, it's been hemmed on the bottom, around the collar, and I created these pads for the shoulders because he has a little bit of almost a football-like pad going around the side of his shoulders like this. It was just a tube stuffed with batting stitched onto it. I did have to go in and add an additional panel into the two sides to make it fit properly, but the vest is all done. The next stage is to start creating the vinyl pieces that are going to get stitched to the front to make it look like his armor. The way I have done that is by going and I picked one side, since it's essentially a mirrored item. I picked one side and covered everywhere that I want vinyl with masking tape. Peeled it off and stuck it on a piece of mat board so I could draw the design out. So this is what I ended up coming up with. So this is one side of that vest, wraps around the arm slightly because you can see the hole for the arm. So here's the breast piece and here's his belt. So using this drawing and tracing paper, I'm able to trace out what sections and how far overlapping and underlapping I want and create the different layered patterns to be able to put all the pieces together. I did a single piece like this so that it was going to be easier to do it and I wouldn't have multiple patterns like this. But using this, I was able to create the individual pieces. So here, I've got one of the upper torso sections. So this is the base layer that will get stitched directly onto the vest. I used a softer vinyl. It's thinner, it's more of a table covering almost. But this will make it, the base layer, a little bit more pliable, make it move easier, and it will be a little bit easier to breathe than if I did the entire thing using a marine boat vinyl. But then I have all of the individual pieces, which are all cut from marine boat vinyl, which will get put on here. And then I'm going to use a zigzag stitch the same way I did the boot covers and the bracers to go all the way around the perimeters to create the layered effect. Now, it won't be very thick, but that's okay. It will still give you the idea of the different panels and everything. And then I still have to come back in and design a piece that I'm actually going to have a raised sculpted pec piece, because this suit very much had a defined pec. So when this is all stitched together and everything's assembled properly, this will get stitched onto the vest. Then the belt will get stitched over it so that the belt is raised above this. And then the mantle will get stitched in right up here. Now, the last time I did Thor, I did the same process for creating everything, but I pinned all the pieces together. I found that working with the vinyl, you can actually do it very easily with using super glue. So all I'm going to be doing is going through on here, and everywhere I want it to be positioned, I'll put it in place, and then I'll come in and just put some dabs of super glue a little bit around the interior border just to hold it in place long enough for me to stitch it, so that it won't shift around on me when I'm stitching, and it makes it so I don't have to worry about going around pins or holes in it or putting the pins in, changing where everything's positioned. So if you're going to try holding vinyl together like this, I found you can do it either by applying it to the smooth surface on the under layer, or you can do it to the rough surface on the back side of the upper layer. Either way works. I've actually been finding that if I apply it to the underside of the top surface and then press it together, it actually adheres faster. I would recommend, though, when you're doing this, you be careful with how you put it on so that way you don't get super glue spilling over the edges of this. And try not to glue your fingers to the piece. I have accidentally glued my fingers a few times with this. There we go. That is now ready to get stitched together. The super glue will hold the pieces on long enough for me to get everything stitched without needing any pins. Okay, so now that all the pieces are done on that, I've switched the presser foot on the machine over to the zipper foot. It's because I got to apply the disc. So what this is the discs that go on right there. The way I created these was I actually cut the discs off the old suit, but because they had the adhesive from the glue or the spray paint on it, I cut a new piece of vinyl, put it right on top, and then stitched that right over the old bad surface so that it's nice and shiny and new and not gunked up from all that spray paint. So it was originally just two pieces of vinyl with some batting in between it to give it a little bit of a shape. So this will go right on there and get stitched right down. And I switched to the zipper foot so that I can go around the edge without really pressing much into the side there. I'm not going to bother gluing it or anything. I'm just going to hold it in place. Doesn't matter if they don't all perfectly match since there's 6 of them. But no one's really going to be looking that closely to see how far off they are from each other. And that simply, we have 1/2 of the upper torso for Thor. So now I've got to do the other side, and I've got to do the same process for the 2 sections of the belt, which will get stitched right over top of it once it gets adhered on. So I've got the 4 panels done, and here they are, so you can kind of see an idea of what it will look like when it's all together, minus the pieces I have to create for the pecs. My intention is to create those and find a nice way of blending it in to make it all work right. I don't know if I'm going to be making a slit, sticking it under, or just stitching it right on top. I still have to figure that out. But these will be all set and ready to go once I get that planned. So that's what I'm going to do right now. Some of you might be wondering why I actually have brown on the belt. It's because if you actually look at some of the detailed photos of the suit, it might look like in the trailers in the movie that the entire suit is black. But if you look at the photos, specifically set photos and screen captions from the movie, you can actually see that this trim around the belt, and there's even some up here underneath the mantle and probably under the arm here, that is actually brown. So I might be going back in and just adding a little stripe here to get a little bit more into the suit. But for now, I'll probably just leave it with this. But I wanted to just throw that in there so it had a little bit more screen accuracy to it. But this is pretty much what it will end up looking like. So let's see about designing that upper pec piece. So I have my base pattern. I've traced out what I need. Now, this portion here is already on the vest. So I really just need to focus on this. So what I'm thinking I might do is cut this shape out of vinyl. And I'm thinking of doing it very similar to how I did the initial discs. And just do two pieces and stitching them onto each other. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm cutting along the black line I've drawn here for creating my piece. So for these three edges, I've given it some extra hem space so that I can actually do the pieces the wrong ways together so I can flip it out like a pouch. These two sides, I'm just going to stitch normally. So that way it will be a little bit flatter. And that will allow me to have the one side stitched. After I flip it through, I'll stitch this one flat, add this onto it. Probably before I stitch it flat, I'll add the disc to that side, stitch it, slip a piece of batting in there to give it some padding, and then stitch this side closed, and then stitch it onto the vest. But by doing it that way, and I might try to thin the batting out a little bit on the top edge just to make it meet a little bit closer. By doing that, it will make this blend in a little bit better. And then I have the disc already on here to help me place it. I don't know if this will work, but this is what I'm going to try. Because I do a lot of experimenting in how I build things. Okay, so now I need to cut 4 pieces of that.
I can do it 2 pieces at a time, and what I'm going to do is actually just pin the pattern right onto it in a few spots to help just hold the paper in place so it doesn't shift on me too much. It'll shift a little bit, but less than if I was just trying to hold it by hand. And then before I cut it, I'll actually go and pin the 2 pieces of fabric together so that it can't shift on me.
So all I need are those. And by putting the pattern here, I can get the idea of exactly where they're supposed to go.
So now I'll do the same thing, but I'm going to flip it over. No, which way do? Just so I can be sure I get the disc in the right position. I'll do it this way. And instead of the pins, I'll just put a few reference dots. You won't see it once they're stitched. You can barely see it now.
Okay, so now to create my little pockets, I have to be sure I stitch these in the right order. I have to stitch it this way so that when I turn it the other way around, the correct side is on the outside. And I only want to stitch these 3 edges. So I'm going to switch back over to my regular presser foot and switch to a straight stitch. And there we go. There's my little pouch. So when I get that side and that side stitched down, that will pop out a little bit. But it won't be too bad because this will get stitched onto the suit. The rest of it I'm going to push down with contact cement so that it holds down and you won't really see any of that edge. I can also go in and color some of that if I need to. So there are my 2 pouches. Now I need to cut my batting to get stuffed inside. So for the batting, I'm using a 1-inch thick new foam polyester batting. It's usually used for seat cushions, but it's not very thick. It's layers, so I can peel it apart easily to be able to create the different thicknesses. And what I'm going to do is, using this, I'm actually going to cut it down back to this line. And then I'm going to cut just a little bit off of here to account for the stitching that will seal it up. And now I'm going to cut 2 of these out.
Okay, and then for cutting it out, I'm going to use
So I'm going to try putting one in. I'm sure it won't fit because it's too big. Yeah, so because this is almost the exact size it currently is. So I'm going to trim a little bit more off the top.
You know what, actually? No, I'll peel some of the layers off to make it work. Now I'll cut some more off to make it fit a little better.
That worked perfect. And then when I go and glue that down, I'll just give it enough bump to make it look like a peck. So now that will get stitched on just like that. So I could have thinned the padding out a little bit more, but I think it'll be okay once I get it all glued down, because it will help stretch it out a little bit more. So here we are. I did not record stitching the vinyl panels onto the vest itself because it was pretty straightforward. I just put the panel in place and then zigzag stitched all the way around it. Around the sleeve here and then around the zipper, I used the presser foot or the zipper foot, so that I could get closer to the edge without having issues with the zippers. Now I did, in the zipper here, I did come back through on some of the segments like right here, and I actually stitched that again so that the vinyl would get stitched to the vest in multiple points. Because what I found is that the vest was actually pulling and the zipper was being exposed, so I had sections on that seam that it was open and you could see the zipper. It didn't look too good, but just simply coming in and restitching in some of these spots took care of that issue so you couldn't see it. But it went all the way around, and the belt actually came pretty close to meeting in the back. So you get some detailed going around the side of it, so as I walk, it's going to be covered by the cape. Now I also came in here with the mantle. This is the same mantle I had used the last time. So all I had done is I had ripped it off, and I just came back in and again stitched it right onto where it was. But it ended up working really well. So now when I want to wear it with the cape, it attaches simply by these snaps that are underneath of it. But I can wear it both with and without the cape. It works just the same either way. I did come back in and remove a little bit more of the batting that's inside the pecs. They worked. They were just a little bit too pronounced for my taste. So I just took some out to make it look a little bit better. So with this done, I now have all the pieces of Thor complete. So let's go see what it actually looks like.